So it's just been announced that Sabato De Sarno shall be exiting Gucci. Well, he's already exited. And of course, this is crazy news, so I had to do an emergency stream. Sabato De Sarno is exiting Gucci after 2 years that he was appointed as a creative director, which means that the upcoming Autumn Winter 25 show that was supposed to happen during Milan Fashion Week on the 25th of February will now be designed by the Gucci design studio. For a quote from the CEO of Gucci, Stefano Cantino, he said, "I would like to express my deep gratitude to Sabato for his passion and dedication to Gucci. I sincerely appreciate how he honored Gucci's craftsmanship and heritage with such commitment." Gucci sales slumped by 25% to 1.64 billion euros in the third quarter of 2024, dragging heavily on parent company Kering, which is obviously Gucci is their highest brand, is the biggest brand of Kering. And so Kering issued a profit warning off the back of the sales slump, its third in a row. The Italian designer Sabato De Sarno joined Gucci from Valentino, where he was latterly the fashion director, overseeing both men's and women's wear collections. Before joining Valentino in 2009, he worked at Dolce & Gabbana and Prada. A new creative director will be announced in due time. And once again, the CEO has given his thanks. So there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, essentially what I've initially been saying is essentially what has happened. The second that Gucci parted ways with Alessandro Michele, I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because they saw a decrease in profits, but it was at a time when overall there was a luxury slowdown. We were in a serious and severe economic crisis. So I thought they were jumping the gun a bit. And something, whether you like Alessandro Michele's aesthetic or not, because I know that some people really like it, some people don't. One thing I've always said about Alessandro Michele and Gucci is that his aesthetic is very distinctive. And my critique for Sabato's Gucci, and it's always been the same from day one, I've been saying, I don't think Sabato De Sarno is a bad designer. I don't think his clothes are bad in any way. I just think that the strategy of the Kering team, bringing him in to kind of make everything more commercial and more palatable to the average audience and, you know, playing into this quiet luxury trend, I knew it wouldn't work. Because when you look at a lot of the Gucci collections designed by Sabato De Sarno, which is what I used to say, it looks like so many other brands. Like the clothing that they were making could be so many other brands. So I don't see why you would choose the Gucci version over another version of a brand that you've been buying for that look anyway. So I just didn't really see the appeal of Sabato De Sarno's Gucci, and that's once again not really his fault. That's more to do with the executive decisions that have been made at Kering. We saw shortly after Alessandro Michele and Gucci parted ways, a sort of executive reshuffling. We saw lots of people on the executive level changing and them hiring new staff. So I think really the people at least to blame, the executives at Gucci, and having this horrible plan and thinking that things were going to get better by having an aesthetic that so many other brands have and not really separating yourself in any way from the curve. And it's crazy because when I was doing research into the Saint Laurent collection and reading into Anthony Vaccarello interviews yesterday, one of the things he said was that when he came up into fashion, and I definitely mirror this sentiment, every brand was unique. And so it was very interesting because every single brand gave you a different point of view on things and gave you a different aesthetic. Whereas now it's almost like all these luxury conglomerates in pursuit of trying to chase more money, they are all looking the same aesthetically and they all make the same clothes aesthetically. And to me, that just doesn't work. And they are prisoners of their own success. Literally, I've been saying this about luxury. I said it, 2 days ago, that Alessandro Michele is the exception, not the rule. Yes, Alessandro Michele was in the design team. He wasn't really a known designer when he became the creative director of Gucci. And he built, the success of Gucci a lot. Like he made Gucci loads of money. However, that's an exception, not the rule. These brands are so big and the financial and economic targets that they set their creative directors are so high that they really need only now big name designers. It's only big name designers that can really move the needle from a marketing standpoint, from a buzz standpoint, to really push these brands forward. So it's either they accept that in the short term they're going to lose money, or they can keep hiring people that they think they can control to make, their creative decisions and keep failing. Anytime you have business people trying to tell creative directors how their aesthetic should look, you already know they're going to lose. You already know it's going to be trouble from there, because there's a reason why business people are business people and creative people are creative people. Every time I've seen a business exec trying to change and say, no, this is the aesthetic that will work, I've always seen, even brands I've worked for, I've always seen things go downhill when that happens. AZ says, all these brands are starting to look like number 21. If you know, you know. Yeah, it's facts. I just don't know what they are thinking with this whole strategy of everything being pared back because, they want to cater to a certain audience. It doesn't make sense. And when Alessandro Michele was making loads of money for Gucci, the main audience was in Asia. So can you imagine that massive audience for Gucci in Asia that Alessandro Michele had? The brand just decided to do a 180. So what happens to all those customers that went to Gucci for that specific maximalist, androgynous look that Alessandro Michele was providing? What happens to all those customers? So sometimes I feel like these brands and these companies, they don't even think about the customer base that they have. They're not really considering, will we be able to attract the same customer base and build on it at the same time if we completely change the aesthetic? This doesn't make any sense. So these huge brands have a target market of everyone that can pay, and they can't all have it at the same time. Exactly. And I think that's the biggest problem with the way that these brands view things and the way that they view business. There must be, and I always say this, I don't know what it is, but for a lot of these luxury brands, there must be a cap. There must be a point where you literally cannot grow anymore. Like you've exhausted every possible luxury customer that could possibly exist on the planet. I think a lot of these brands are reaching that point, and they are in serious trouble once they reach there, because if the stock prices are, no longer going to go up, and then people are just going to feel like it's a bad investment because they can't see, these brands growing anymore, everything's going to tank. People are going to start selling their stocks, their shares, sorry. So yeah, I just don't know why these brands don't understand this. They think they can just grow forever to infinity and beyond. It's just not realistic, to be honest. And I know people are going to blame Sabato for this, but it's not Sabato's fault. This was literally, when Sabato was brought in, it was clear that their strategy was to pare things back collectively. So I don't think it's anything to do with him. It's more to do with the business model and the people up above, to be honest. Because now, even right now, what you're looking at on the screen is the Gucci Ancora collection. This is the first collection that Sabato did. And if you look at these pieces, think of how many brands you can think of that provide these same pieces. White tank tops, long coats, mini skirts. Like, how many brands create garments like that? Grey hoodies. Sad says, I feel like the cap is 200 billion market cap. After that, they need to go into luxury experiences, hotels, architecture, in my opinion. Some of them have already done that. LVMH does own a few hotels and bars and cafes and stuff. So they are already going into that. But of course, they don't focus on it as much as the luxury goods, because the luxury goods are the main category for all these conglomerates. So I think that's the next thing. Once they've maximized fashion and luxury goods, then they'll really try hard to start maximizing hospitality and, luxury experiences and things like that. So yeah, we'll see though. I'm not going to lie, I'm surprised Kering panicked and fired Alessandro Michele so quickly after so many years. At the time, it was such a weird decision. No one was asking for a pared down Gucci. Michele's vision was working. So weird. Yeah, it doesn't, once again, like I said, it doesn't make sense. I've been saying it from the second that they parted. I was like, it doesn't make sense. Especially for this aesthetic that you can find everywhere. I just don't understand what they were thinking. I don't really get it. Sometimes I think people also overestimate the brand cachet that they have. Maybe they just thought because it's Gucci, they can just do whatever they want and things would work. And obviously it hasn't. And with Kering especially, Kering cannot afford for Gucci to not work, because Gucci is literally, the biggest brand under the Kering umbrella. So when Gucci is suffering, Kering is suffering. If it was Bottega, they wouldn't be suffering as bad. But it's Gucci. Sabato's Gucci was a poor attempt at Tom Ford in order to captivate the Gen Z market. Too bad not many of us can afford to front the rising prices. Yeah, but once again, I don't really think that's Sabato's fault. Like I've said before, I said earlier, it seemed like their actual strategy was to pare things back. and to go very minimal in a sense. Because with Tom Ford, it wasn't even, not everything was minimal. I know people like to think of Tom Ford's Gucci as minimal. I wouldn't say all of it was. That being said, the appeal of Tom Ford's Gucci was not, and this is the thing about luxury. When you sell luxury goods, you have to sell more than just clothing. That's why I was always asking the question, what would make me buy a plain long coat from Gucci over all the other brands that offer the same thing? You have to really sell it to me. With Tom Ford, he was selling a lifestyle. This jet set lifestyle. People felt like when you wore Gucci, you were part of that in a way. There's a certain feeling that you had when you wore Gucci or when you saw someone wearing Tom Ford's Gucci. There's a whole, vibe around it. With Sabato, there's no vibe or energy or branding around the clothing that he makes. You know what I mean? There's no lifestyle. With Alessandro Michele, it's the same thing. This androgynous, artsy, fartsy person that goes thrifting. It's a look. It's like almost like a cult. It's like there's like an audience of people that want to be part of that group. With Sabato De Sarno's Gucci, there's no group to be a part of. It's clothing without the lifestyle that they're selling you. And with luxury brands, you have to have that lifestyle as a component to what you're selling. I think Kering should find some strategy to not rely that much on Gucci. It's kind of alarming that such a big corporation relies only on one brand. Well, it's because they don't have a choice. Because it's only Gucci that really makes loads and loads of billions for Kering compared to all the other brands. So they actually don't have a choice. LVMH is a bit different because LVMH has brands that make multiple billions, whether it's Dior or Louis Vuitton. And so they have more leeway for a brand to fail and it not being too bad on their financials. Kering just doesn't have that. I don't think there's anything they can do about it other than to try and, bolster the growth of all the other brands, especially brands that are closer to that mark, like Saint Laurent, for example. But easier said than done. A lot easier said than done. I was going to compare current Gucci to Prada, but then I remember that Prada does have a visual identity at least. Yeah, it does. So you can't really compare it, to be fair. For a brand like Gucci, they became a victim to the aesthetic trend of the period. And as a house like theirs, I think it was far more harmful because customers expect a distinctive look from Gucci. Yeah, I agree. No, Saint Laurent makes a lot of money, but nowhere close to Gucci. I can even show you the financials. One second, let me pull up the Q3 Kering report so you can see the difference. Okay, so this is the financial report. So as you can see, look at the difference. Look at the difference. So obviously Gucci had a loss. They recorded a loss. So in Q3 of 2024, they made 1.6 billion euros, whereas the year before in Q3, they made 2.2 billion euros. Now compare that to the next brand, which is Yves Saint Laurent, and Yves Saint Laurent is less than half. So that's what I mean. Like, they don't really have a choice other than to try and bolster the size of Yves Saint Laurent because Yves Saint Laurent is the closest in revenue figures, and then Bottega is close as well, but far. So once you look at the financials and you see the difference, the gap between Gucci and all the other brands, it becomes very clear why it's not as easy as, them just doing something quickly and being able to, not rely on Gucci as much. So that's why I was saying I don't really personally think they have a choice. I think it's a lot more difficult than that, to be honest. Leo says Gucci is a global brand. Their others aren't. To grow, the others have to have the cachet. Like, that is extremely difficult and takes so much time. Yeah, because Gucci is like, the brands that make those billions every quarter are the big names, like the Louis Vuittons, the Guccis, the Dior's. Those are the kind of brands that make that kind of money. So Yves Saint Laurent is like a big brand, but it's not that. It's not one of those. So I said, oh my God, I didn't know the numbers are this bad. Yeah, they are that bad. They very much are that bad. And yeah, so the Q4 earnings are going to be, the 2024 financial performance is going to be coming out on the 11th of February, they've announced. So on the 11th, we'll have a look, but it is going to be a bloodbath. It's looking very much like 4 quarters in a row. They're going to have to give, to the shareholders, we have a loss warning. People who are not interested in fashion too much still think Gucci is the ugly, weird brand of the guy that was with Lana and Jared Leto at the Met Gala. Like, Kering fumbled it that much. Really? Do people think that? I'm wondering what makes that much money for Gucci, the bags and shoes, because their fragrances are lackluster to say the least compared to YSL. Yeah, their fragrances might be lackluster, but they sell a lot because Gucci is a name that people know. So when they think of a fragrance, they're like, oh, I'm wearing that Gucci fragrance. You know, most people are not really into fragrances. It's more about name brands and, you know, buying a part of the dream in a sense. That's what they're being sold. So that's kind of what they're buying into. But also, yes, leather goods. I mean, a lot of people buy Gucci footwear, for example. Gucci footwear is a big category. So no, they make the money a lot of ways, but fragrances definitely part of it. YSL by far makes better fragrances than Gucci. And I mean, YSL even has a private line that's really good and well regarded. So yeah, you can't really compare the fragrance line of YSL to Gucci. Gucci's fragrance line is whack compared to YSL, but to the everyday average person, they don't really care, to be honest. Yeah, and just like you're saying, I touched on this earlier that they should have kept Alessandro Michele. They definitely should have. They just jumped the gun. They saw bad financial performance in the short term and they just jumped the gun, not knowing that it was going to get worse. If they had known, they probably would have kept him, but hey, hindsight. It's a crazy thing. The next young man said they've actually humiliated Sabato. I don't think so, because I think collectively we all know that it's not really his fault. Like, he barely had time to sell garments, really, and to get stuff in stores to really make that much of a difference. Like, he was there for what, like 18 months? Close to 2 years? Like, it's not... He barely had enough time there. It's the executive people and the terrible decisions that they've made forcing him into an aesthetic that isn't going to work. That is who is to blame. So I don't really think that they've embarrassed Sabato in any way, to be honest. I don't really agree with that. I think the only people that should be embarrassed are the Kering team. Like the people that sit on the board at Kering. Because they've just been making all the wrong decisions for 2 years straight. Those are the people that should be embarrassed. Like if your job is to make the financial decisions for a brand and you've made the wrong decisions 24 months in a row, surely those are the people that should be embarrassed. Not a designer that was there doing a job, being told what to do by these execs making the wrong decisions. And Alex, this is also true. It looks really bad for such a big brand to change the creative director that quickly. Usually it's after 3 years, not 2. Facts. Oh yeah, so Daniel Lee is the perfect example for something like this because once again, and it's weird because these execs, I'm not saying that I'm that smart because I'm really not. Some of the takes I have are just common sense takes, but I've had these takes from the start and you can go and watch my old videos, my old streams. With Burberry, the second that they raised the prices, I made that video where I was like, why, Burberry is struggling and why it's not going to be better anytime soon. And I was talking about how the customer base, when you look at the customer base for Burberry and then you look at the prices that they were charging and how consumers see where Burberry sits in the market, it wouldn't work. So if I, from my living room, can see that, I don't understand why they can't see that. Same thing with Gucci. When they hired Sabato, I was like, okay, let's see what they're going to do. When I saw the first collection from Sabato and I saw this ultra minimalist, could be any brand collection, I was like, that's not going to work because that aesthetic looks like a million other brands. And so why would you buy the Gucci version over the other brands when if you were a past Gucci customer, you were a Gucci customer because you were buying into Alessandro Michele's aesthetic, right? And his world and the dream that he was selling. What Sabato is selling is a complete 180 to that. So you've essentially alienated the customers that were there for Alessandro Michele. So now in their mind, they think that, they're going to keep the Gucci customers and build more by going really minimalist and really safe. But actually what you've done is the customers you had already acquired through Alessandro Michele, you've gone a complete 180. So those people don't want to buy into your stuff anymore. So now you have to find a new audience, which you couldn't find. And so that's why you're going to see issues with your financial performance. These things are not really that crazy. Like these things are really common sense. They're really common sense takes. Like you don't really have to be that smart to see that, like to notice that. Like that's how I could come to those conclusions so quickly, just seeing those things. As he says, it's crazy, man. Presented 7 collections over 2 years, if you include Resort, and it still wasn't enough time to get his message across. The fashion calendar is so unforgivable. There's no time. Yeah, for sure. For sure. The funny thing about Alessandro Michele, because everyone keeps bringing Alessandro Michele up, I know for a fact when Alessandro Michele heard this news, He must have been sitting in Rome, white champagne in hand, pouring his champagne, drinking some premium champagne, just like life is good. I'm so sure that's what Alessandro Michele was doing. Because do you guys remember when Alessandro Michele first went to Valentino, the first collection that he unveiled, that surprise collection that he unveiled, his debut at Valentino, happened when Gucci was showing. Like just before Gucci was about to have its runway show, Alessandro Michele dropped that collection, so it kind of took the attention away from the Gucci show. Because I was at that Gucci show, right? And when I was at the show, all of us were on our phones like, oh my God, Alessandro Michele just dropped. So we're literally at the Gucci show, but we're on our phones like trying to go through Alessandro Michele's Valentino show and trying to see like what he produced for the brand. So you can tell that obviously however it ended, however they parted ways was messy. And so therefore he probably doesn't like the executive team. There's issues there. There's definitely animosity. Otherwise he wouldn't release his collection literally when they are showing. So I know for a fact, anytime he sees any news of Gucci doing bad, he must just be in Rome, just chilling, relaxing. But yeah, we'll see though. We'll see. This is so unsustainable. Yes, it is. Super unsustainable. You can't not give someone a chance to even have like a sell through at least for a few years. You need to give customers time to get used to an aesthetic, especially in the case of Gucci, where they were going a completely different direction. You can't just expect that overnight people are just going to understand that. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. And that's why this is facts. Like, it's going to cause further instability for Gucci. It's confusing for the customer. Because whoever they hire, the next person might go in a totally different direction. And now Gucci is just a brand that has no identity and just is directionless. Every couple of years with a new creative director, every time they go in a different direction. And, you know, they don't even know what they're doing. They just keep going in different directions. They're completely clueless. It will be such a shame if Gucci disappears. Imagine a world with no Gucci. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Gucci's way too big to fail. They're going to see bad performance in the time being, but they're not going to completely fail. Like a brand that makes the billions that they make, even if bad financial performance to them still means that they still make billions. No company that's making billions can completely just, die overnight. They might have to fire some people and then, restore a few things, but dying is not in the cards for Gucci anytime soon. Sean McQueen says, the problem isn't the designers, the problem is the CEOs and business people ruining fashion. Oh yeah, 100%. I alluded to that earlier. I'm not sure when you came in, Sean McQueen, but I said that this whole situation has nothing to do with Sabato De Sarno. It's more to do with the CEOs and the people in executive positions. Where do you think Sabato is going to go? Probably nowhere as big as Gucci. I mean, all these jobs that are up for grabs like Fendi and, I don't think Sabato is going to any of those brands. I think Sabato is probably going to go and work as a design director somewhere for the time being. If it isn't Eddie Simon, who do you see taking over? I don't really know because I just think Eddie Simon's the only option. I mean, definitely not Kim Jones because Kim Jones is vacant now. I'm trying to think of the other vacant designers. People have said Paolo Piccioli, but the thing is that he's supposedly going to Fendi, so that's out of the window. And it makes sense for him to go to Fendi. I mean, he used to work there. He worked there earlier in his career. It only makes sense that he goes back to Fendi. It's kind of similar to the whole Alessandro shebang. But anyway, who else? I mean, people have said John Galliano. I don't see that. I don't see John Galliano doing what they want him to do and make money the way that I just don't see how he would achieve that. So I don't really see John Galliano going. It's really only Eddie Simon, to be honest. It's either Eddie Simon or it's two options. They're either going to hire Eddie Simon or they're going to hire a designer that we've never heard of, thinking that they're smarter than everyone else. And then that designer's not going to sell. And then we're back to square one. If they decide to hire another designer that we don't know and think they can control that designer and control the narrative, it's not going to work. Mark my words, it's just not going to work. because executives trying to decide. The reason why they need ASMR first of all is we've seen what happens when business people think that they know better than creatives on creativity. This is exactly what you get. So Eddie Simon is the kind of designer that has a strong enough design language where he's just going to tell the execs, this is my vision and you're hiring me for this vision. And if you're not going to hire me for this vision, then I just won't come here. That's Eddie Simon. So they're not going to control him, and his creativity will shine through and he'll make money. If they hire some young designer that they can control, you're just going to have some tasteless exec trying to tell them some quite luxury trend they saw on Instagram that they want the brand to follow because they think that a lot of customers fall within that aesthetic and therefore they feel like it can make a lot of money. And it's just going to continue flopping. Let me be clear that Gucci dropping Sabato this soon is basically a total self-admission of failure. No way to dress his short tenure as anything but a total creative and commercial catastrophe. I mean, that's facts. I can't say I don't agree with you there. Do you think Gucci will ever be number one again and beat Balenciaga? I mean, Balenciaga's not number one either. None of them were ever number one. The biggest brands in fashion, Chanel and Louis Vuitton. So yeah, Balenciaga was never close. Gucci was closer, but Gucci was never number one. So yeah, I don't even think they're ever going to be number one. Any of those brands, to be honest. Yeah, Gucci was never number one. Oh, in Kering. Okay. So do I ever think Gucci will be number one again and beat Balenciaga? So Balenciaga is nowhere near Gucci. It's never, ever been anywhere near Gucci. Like, it's not even close. Like, it's not close. Trust me. I think people think that Balenciaga, and I encounter this all the time. I see comments like this all the time. I think people think that Balenciaga is way bigger than it actually is. Balenciaga is nowhere near Gucci. Like, Gucci has always been number one for Kering and it will stay number one unless something really, really bad happens. Like, there is a massive gap between Gucci and Balenciaga. Like, the gap is so far, it's unbelievable. I think, yeah, people really think Balenciaga is some huge brand. It's not. It's really not. Like, let me show you guys the financial reports, because I think it's very important sometimes to look at these numbers, because I think unless you look at the numbers, it just won't make sense. So let me bring up the Q3 financial reports once again, just so that you guys can see. Like, Balenciaga is not even close. Like, it's not even, they're not in the same league. Okay, so if you look at this, just look at the numbers, look at the gap between Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent, which is the second biggest brand. Just look at the gap in numbers, and then look at the gap between Yves Saint Laurent and Bottega Veneta. Then after Bottega Veneta, you can see a section that says other houses. That's every other house Kering owns, all put together, minus Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, and Bottega Veneta. Balenciaga is in that other houses group, by the way. So Balenciaga plus everything else is not even close to half of what Gucci makes. So I don't know why people think that Balenciaga is some like humongous brand. People think that Balenciaga is just out here making like crazy amounts of money. Like, it's not. It's really not. Like, if you look at the numbers, you can see it clear as day. So yeah, this idea that will Balenciaga ever be number one again? It's always been number one. But Balenciaga was never close. It just was never even close to start with. Bro, I feel like LVMH management could make Balenciaga so big. They probably could. Because Balenciaga, first of all, fragrance line is lacking. There's a lot of money that could be made there. There's a lot of money that could be made in a lot of categories with Balenciaga if they really wanted to maximize every corner of profits. I know LVMH wishes they could get their hands on Saint Laurent. Facts. Bernard Arnault wants everything. Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega, he wants it all. He wants everything. Like Greenhead said, everyone thinks Balenciaga is huge because people buy fake Balenciaga stuff from Turkey and it looks like they sell a lot. You also need to remember that something that sells the most for brands outside of luxury goods are fragrances. Now, Balenciaga, they don't really make money. Like, the beauty side of Balenciaga is lacking. So if you think of the fact that you have some brands where the beauty makes billions, and then Balenciaga, where the beauty is literally like null and void. That's part of why there's a massive gap there. Can Balenciaga quality get any worse though? LVMH are gonna freak out if there aren't any corners left. Like the thing about Balenciaga, talking about Balenciaga, is Balenciaga does sell well in terms of ready to wear. They do sell really well ready to wear. They probably sell just ready to wear, some of the most ready to wear across the whole industry. But ready to wear is not what makes the most money. So even though they do, you see a lot of people wearing Balenciaga. It looks like, oh my God, everyone's wearing Balenciaga. It still doesn't account for that much money because not many people in general can afford those kind of things compared to fragrances. And this is true. Gucci handbags and accessories have become almost a staple for upper class women. And even Balenciaga bags that have been really good, like the motorcycling bag, you have like just a few bags actually, like Balenciaga bags that have done really well. Like when people are like, oh, the city bag is like really good, it sells really well. The sales still aren't really close to like Chanel flap. It's not close. So yes, it does seem like these brands sometimes are doing well, but not that well. I think it's because Balenciaga aims to have this LA Hollywood hypebeast ethos in this quite luxury day. Balenciaga is just loud